The man's initial action upon being given a new life unfolded without hesitation. He had to make the difficult choice of ensuring his own father ended up behind bars. He was known by all as a monster, a person so cold that he could bring harm even to his own father. Only he was aware that the man everyone called his father was actually a monster disguised as a human. In his former existence, a man discovered he possessed the least valuable E-rank class upon awakening. His father, overcome with shame, lashed out at him so violently that the boy barely survived the assault. His mother, just as she always did, was there. Someone moved forward to protect him. At that time, however, his strength had not yet developed. He stood frozen, powerless to intervene, forced to witness his father brutally end his mother's life. Given a new lease on life, he made a solemn vow to prevent such a disaster from ever occurring once more. In this world, humans with special abilities lived alongside demons. In his former life, he had ranked among the most powerful of all awakeners, commanding the greatest army ever assembled by mankind, known as the Divine Legion. The group battled fiercely, driving out demons from their lairs in service to the rulers, who were worshipped as deities. They just needed to eliminate this level. The task of defeating the Demon King, a formidable foe who controlled the forces of 5 different elements, awaited them. They aimed to accomplish the remarkable goal of overtaking 100 high-level demon lairs. He believed that completing the mission would finally allow him to rest for a while. He longed to share a joyful evening with the woman he cherished above all others. In that instant of newfound relief, a teammate by the name of entered the scene. In the shadows, power was quietly amassed until a lethal ambush was suddenly unleashed. In a flash, the party's youngest mage lost their life. Before they understood the situation, events had already unfolded. His carefully laid trap had already ensnared them, leaving no way out of the formation. Regardless of how loudly he bellowed with anger, regarded him as if he were no more important than a noisy dog barking in the distance. Right in front of him, methodically inflicted pain on both his girlfriend and he was made to witness, powerless, as they were mercilessly killed before his eyes. He only came to realize the truth in the final moments of his life. From the beginning, the beings known as gods viewed them merely as expendable pieces in their own game. Once their strength reached a level that endangered its survival, there would be no second thoughts before removing them completely. 10 years earlier, had secretly been placed among them as a spy by the gods. Flashed a chilly smirk, making it clear that gaining their trust was his goal. For years, the character had shared the stage with their companion, yet even now, they felt a sense of revulsion. Once the task of eliminating everyone was complete, the opportunity for a much-needed, extended vacation would finally be within reach. Even as the last syllables hung in the air, unleashed a demon-piercing death beam that obliterated him completely. His awareness slowly slipped away. The Demon King, whom they believed to have defeated, unexpectedly materialized in front of him. The character presented him with a proposal. He acted in hopes of protecting both his loved ones and his fellow fighters. More crucially, his goal was to get back at for what he had done. He immediately agreed, showing no signs of doubt. The Demon King growled deeply before activating the power of reversal. In a flash, memories from long ago pulled his mind backward through time. As he blinked awake, he realized he was now seated inside a middle school classroom. A teacher's voice could be heard calling out his name. He stopped in his tracks, realizing that he had truly returned, and the timing coincided exactly with the moments leading up to his awakening. The teacher, noticing that he was sitting absent-mindedly, responded with a sudden, sharp reprimand. The teacher dismissed the student, expressing concern that, despite already being in trouble for sleeping during lessons and facing a class change that afternoon, the student continued to doze off. She ordered the student to move to the back of the room, then continued teaching as if nothing had happened. Within this realm, 5 elemental forces existed: lightning, flora, cloud, core, and star. However, each individual was capable of possessing only a single element. Ms., their teacher, held the unique power of the cloud element, a gift more uncommon than any other. Elemental abilities could be categorized into three primary groups: combat, utility, and special. The various categories gave rise to an endless array of distinctive careers. Within the school, the most powerful guild reigned supreme. The group consisted of 4 exceptional members: a skilled mage, a brave warrior, a talented bard, and a stealthy assassin. Up to this point, almost 100 different professions had been identified. The group was divided into 4 distinct levels: green, blue, red, and gold, and every individual was given a single opportunity in their entire life to unlock their potential. The fate of each student hung in the balance that afternoon, as the class assignment would shape their future roles in society forever. After making this announcement, the teacher signaled that the lesson had ended and allowed the students to leave. He chose to go outdoors to breathe in the cool, fresh air. As she wandered, she came across a boy with glasses who was being picked on by others. The person responsible for the bullying turned out to be the infamous troublemaker with the yellow hair. From the moment he had awakened earlier than most with an uncommon red-tier class, he made a habit of bullying the weaker students at school, constantly ridiculing them as worthless and claiming they relied on others to awaken their powers. He brought his foot down forcefully onto the hand of the boy wearing glasses. The opponents sneered, certain that their impending awakening granted them the right to challenge him. He saw himself as a superior, a rare-class red-tier awakener who would always look down on those he considered beneath him. The boy, overwhelmed by the mounting pressure, reluctantly reached into his pocket and offered several hundred yuan in a desperate attempt to seek forgiveness. Without warning, Ms. moved ahead and firmly told to stop. The setting was a school, and suspicion filled the air as someone wondered aloud if another person intended to commit a robbery. Yellow-haired character responded with a lopsided grin. He bumped into them and overheard their conversation. She believed it was only right that he should buy a milk tea for each of her brothers. The speaker questioned the other's attempt to defend a student, hinting that if not for their attractive appearance, they would have been expelled from the school long ago. Sauntered away, his group of followers trailing behind him. He recalled that during his past life, Ms. had offered him significant support following his awakening. Witnessing her being disgraced at this moment stirred a deep sense of indignation within him. Unable to let it go, he moved swiftly to intercept the person with yellow hair before he could get away. Yellow-haired boy ignored him completely and simply pushed him out of the way. Muttering under their breath, the figure promised a return, intent on observing as the others embarrassed themselves with their lack of skill. At the same time, Ms. assisted the boy with glasses as he stood up. She was preparing to reassure him, but before she could speak, he hurriedly accepted full responsibility, claiming that the money had been handed over by choice. Ms. exhaled in resignation and chose to overlook the situation. Before long, the moment arrived for them to experience their own awakening. In this world, individuals could awaken by following one of 2 different paths. A natural awakening was one way, similar to the experience of. Such occurrences tended to befall individuals who possessed outstanding athleticism and natural ability, often sparked during moments of overwhelming emotion. The alternative approach involved using the awakening chamber. The accomplishment stood as the pinnacle of years of dedication and hard work by numerous scientists. Within the space, an individual's feelings and rush of adrenaline would reach their peak, causing hidden abilities to surface. Despite this, individuals were granted just a single opportunity in their lives to awaken, and whatever result they received was left completely to chance. For this reason, people viewed awakening and receiving a class as their sole opportunity to completely change the course of their destinies. Before long, his moment arrived. Ms. cautioned her student to stay attentive, urging them not to lose concentration as they often did during lessons. She emphasized the importance of putting forth their best effort and made sure the student understood her expectations. He responded briefly, then entered the chamber. In his former life, he had discovered his abilities as an E-rank core-type warrior, a green-tier class considered average, which made him a frequent target for bullying. It was only after he reached S-rank that he unlocked one of the most uncommon classes, allowing him to restore his reputation at last. He found himself curious, questioning which class he would discover upon awakening this time. As soon as he entered the chamber, the system signaled a malfunction, indicating that detection was unsuccessful. Before he had time to understand what was happening, a new message flashed before him, announcing the presence of 5 different elemental types. Simultaneously, a wave of intense heat rushed through his veins, filling his entire body with burning energy. To his astonishment, a mysterious voice echoed within his mind, declaring that the Infinite Awakening system had been activated. A radiant panel materialized in front of his gaze, announcing that he held mastery over every elemental affinity. It explained that he was free to select any class from any element as his starting profession. From that moment forward, every time the energy of a specific element hit the necessary level, he would either unlock a fresh, randomly chosen class tied to that element or enhance one he already possessed. His eyes grew wide with shock, realizing that no one else had ever awakened more than a single elemental class throughout their entire life. He not only had the freedom to select his element and class whenever he wanted, but he also possessed the ability to continually acquire new powers. He realized that he had the potential to collect every level: green, blue, red, and even gold. The legendary special tier classes, once thought unattainable, were now accessible to him. The system confirmed that only the first class could be selected by the user, while every class after that would be assigned at random. At that moment, he understood that everything happening was caused by the Demon King residing within him. The limitless force of endless awakening. After selecting the first class, the system will clear all elemental gauges. The decision required cautious consideration. Outside, the crowd began to grow restless, wondering why he was taking so long inside. At that moment, he emerged from the chamber. Ms. greeted him before anyone else, her voice filled with excitement as she inquired about which class he had awakened. He wore a look of remorse, silently apologizing to his teacher for failing to meet expectations. The protagonist found themselves reborn as a core-type warrior, ranked at the lowest green tier quality. Ms. showed no signs of disappointment. Rather, she offered him words of encouragement. Even those from the green tier had gone on to achieve remarkable things. Perseverance ensured that the world continued to offer opportunities to anyone who kept trying. Just as he prepared to continue speaking, Ms. softly rested her hand on his shoulder, signaling him to pause. Sensing the exhaustion weighing on them, someone acknowledged their fatigue and encouraged them to get some sleep, understanding that the process of awakening could be truly draining. Yellow Hair happened to pass by and noticed the scene unfolding before him. He wasted no time in teasing her, echoing her words in a playful, melodic voice. He repeated her advice, suggesting that with enough effort, the world would never turn its back on someone. The teacher's words surprised them. They had always believed the teacher to be more competent. Now, hearing the teacher offer empty encouragement, they couldn't help but wonder when the teacher had started relying on such meaningless advice. He raised his voice and abruptly informed the teacher that their explanation did not reflect how things truly happened in the real world. The reality was, being placed in the green tier marked someone as destined to be considered worthless forever. The world had always operated under the same unchanging rules. The gods reserved their favor for those with strength, while the weak existed only to be crushed beneath the feet of others. As soon as gods were brought up, his temper ignited. Ms. attempted to silence him, yet the boy with yellow hair continued talking nonstop. The student reminded the teacher that both of them understood what being in the green tier meant. It guaranteed a lifetime spent confined to the back row. The world operated on harsh rules. Without power or connections, a person had no hope for the future. Those lacking these advantages were inevitably cast aside. Those with greater strength always received superior resources, allowing them to become even more powerful. Meanwhile, those who awakened with the green tier found themselves destined for failure, condemned to remain at the lowest ranks among all awakeners. The character questioned whether anyone truly believed in the promises that hard work could transform a person's life, or in the idea that some people were born as green-tier geniuses. He became increasingly agitated, feeling as though destiny had already been determined at birth, simply because of the family one belonged to. To him, the Awakener Academy seemed to perfectly reflect how the real world operated on those same unfair principles. The student pointed out that the teacher was also in the blue tier, implying that he was only qualified to be a struggling, unimportant school teacher. The suggestion was made that those with green tier status ought to leave early rather than continue to drain resources funded by the government. Before he managed to complete his sentence, the drink was swiftly taken from his grasp. The liquid was hurled directly into his face, drenching him instantly. Yellow-haired boy paused momentarily, his face quickly contorting with intense anger. The person questioned whether the other had any understanding of their actions. Responded in a calm manner, expressing that he simply disliked listening to the other person speak. Yellow Hair paused for a moment, blinking in surprise before erupting into wild laughter. He couldn't believe how generous he'd been, thinking to himself that he had shown far too much kindness. He suddenly lashed out, aiming a punch directly at. Ms. was encouraged to intervene. Yellow Hair's strike closed in, leaving almost no space between his blow and the target. He believed that those he saw as weak didn't deserve to live. In an instant, a gleaming materialized in his grasp, allowing him to easily intercept the incoming attack. Yellow-haired boy's eyes widened in shock just as a powerful force struck him and sent him reeling backward. The force sent him flying more than 2 meters across the air. Just before he hit the earth, he coughed out a splash of tomato juice. Yellow Hair stood there, completely bewildered by the recent events. The crowd murmured in shock, struggling to comprehend how he had managed such a feat. They watched in disbelief as the boy with yellow hair was knocked backward through the air. Spoke with a chilly tone, stating that a core-type warrior was often regarded as belonging to the lowest rank. To the narrator, however, it stood out as the most powerful of all. Yellow-haired character let out a dismissive scoff, believing that luck was the only reason the other person had managed to avoid harm. The speaker confidently revealed that they belonged to the rare red tier class, making it clear that they considered themselves far superior to those they deemed worthless. Ms. immediately recognized what had really happened, realizing that luck had nothing to do with it. He had employed the warrior's most advanced technique, the inside step footwork. At the very moment it receives the strongest impact, it fully absorbs and neutralizes all harm. In less than 1/10 of a second, with speed beyond human capability, the force is redirected straight back toward the one who launched the attack. The narrator explained that the teacher had spent a decade practicing, yet even after all those years, mastering the technique remained out of reach. It seemed impossible for someone who had only awakened their powers that very day, with no prior experience in combat, to succeed in such a feat. Yellow Hair showed no concern at all. He tightened his hold on the dagger that belonged to his Galaxy Assassin class and sneered, silently challenging his opponent and questioning if they were prepared to face death. The speaker looked down with disdain, determined to force their rival to grovel publicly and humiliate them in front of the crowd. He was unaware that there was a purpose behind his decision to select what appeared to be the weakest class. In his past life, had relied on this to challenge destiny and achieve greatness. Meeting the gaze of the blonde-haired person, he began to speak in a measured tone. From the moment someone is born, making choices that determine the course of their life, or whether they live or die, is an error that often goes unrecognized until many years have passed. The moment he finished speaking, the pair found themselves standing directly in front of each other, an electric tension filling the space between them as murmurs spread quickly through the surrounding crowd. Battling with newfound abilities on campus was absolutely not allowed, yet a large crowd had already gathered, their eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. Was born into privilege, with a father who held a prominent government position and an uncle who possessed ownership of the school. In stark contrast, he had grown up with no advantages or notable family connections. The nervous boy, his glasses slipping down his nose, glanced around the room, worry etched on his face. He wondered what their teacher would decide, realizing that if the boy chose to accept the challenge and fight in this place, he might face expulsion. Ms. let out a weary sigh, exasperation evident in her expression. Despite the tension, The teacher positioned herself between E, who had striking yellow hair, and the other student, aiming to calm the situation. She reminded them that both had only discovered their abilities that day, suggesting that they could even become allies in the future. With a firm tone, she insisted that the conflict should stop at that moment. Yellow Hair laughed in a taunting way, clearly amused by the situation. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Someone had dared to challenge him in front of a crowd. The idea that he would simply back down and leave was unthinkable to him. It was already beyond the point of forgiveness, no matter how desperately he pleaded or humbled himself. He prepared to reveal just how vast the divide was between those who were chosen and those considered insignificant. Ms. let out a silent sigh, fully aware that the real difference between class levels was due to the advantages given by attribute bonuses. There was no alteration in the benefits, as a green-tier class still received a full 100% bonus. The blue-tier version of that class offered a 150% bonus. The red tier offered an incredible reward, an astonishing 200% bonus. When a red tier emerged, its abilities instantly measured at double the strength of those in the green tier. The difference in strength between them was nearly impossible to overcome. The boy with glasses nervously stamped his foot, feeling a wave of defeat wash over him. There was no hope left. By every measure of power and influence, he stood no chance against the competition. Despite knowing the man was despicable, the character wondered why anyone would challenge someone clearly more powerful than themselves. To make it in this world, avoiding worthless people was essential. Unable to escape the situation, one must set aside their ego and accept it. One could endure by yielding in difficult moments and reaching further whenever possible. This approach ensured survival. A direct clash would only lead to greater shame, making it the most foolish choice. At the same time, Yellow Hair boosted all of his abilities to their peak, charging straight at E with deadly speed. Ms. felt a sharp pang of worry as she watched E prepare to use the inside step once more, fully aware of how quickly that move drained a person's energy. Yellow Hair unleashed an attack with overwhelming power and incredible speed, making it impossible for him to defend himself this time. Yellow-Haired sneered with confidence, silently daring the other to try and evade his next move. He responded with a calm smile, showing no intention to dodge. In his mind, he saw no reason to avoid what was coming. Even as the last echoes of speech lingered, he triggered his burst speed ability, instantly increasing his pace by more than half for a brief moment. When the gauge reached 100, the flash step activated instantly, and in a heartbeat, he appeared behind the one with yellow hair. Yellow Hair stood in disbelief, unable to follow Yi's swift and unpredictable actions. He wondered when the other person had managed to move behind him without being noticed. Before he had time to react, a sudden gush of tomato juice sprayed out of his mouth. Within moments, he lost his balance and crumpled onto the floor. He shot a frosty look in his direction, silently judging him as nothing more than garbage that should be thrown away. The audience burst into excitement. Some people questioned what had just occurred, while others admitted they hadn't noticed the details, only observing that seemed to collapse on his own. A sudden noise caught everyone's attention, leaving them to wonder if the boy had stumbled. The boy with glasses burst into laughter, amused by the unexpected tumble. It seemed someone had tripped without any help. Even Ms. appeared confused by what had happened. Although the observer missed the incident again, the pink-haired girl behind Ms. scrutinized the scene thoughtfully, her eyes narrowing in concentration. As launched his attack, he activated his burst of speed once more. Not only had he mastered the basic move, but he had also perfected its advanced technique, flash step. Yet, it was still a mystery how he managed to end the battle so quickly in that brief moment. Admiration briefly lit up in the eyes of the girl with pink hair. He had not only achieved the most advanced form of a warrior's fundamental technique, but he was also able to fluidly utilize it during actual battles. In that moment, he had actually thought about steering clear of breaking any school rules in front of others. It was his class monitor, who carefully observed and evaluated this behavior. All around, the crowd whispered in confusion, wondering what had happened to that day. They noticed that his opponent had hardly made any effort, making the situation seem almost laughable to those watching. Simultaneously, a notification echoed in his thoughts, informing him that he had just earned 50 experience points toward his class. As he had predicted, utilizing his class abilities and gaining experience through combat allowed him to advance, while overcoming an adversary who shared his element rewarded him with elemental points. He realized that earning just 50 points wasn't enough, so he decided he would have to begin raiding demon lairs right away. He had selected the core-type warrior class, knowing that when it advanced, it would unlock an exclusive trait and extremely strong abilities that no other class could offer. Determined to improve more quickly than ever, he resolved to reach new levels and advance at a record pace. With that thought in mind, he began to walk away, but the boy with battered yellow hair forced himself upright, determined to stand in his path. Before Yellow Hair could complete his sentence, he suddenly launched a full-force surprise attack against. At the very moment he believed his attack had connected, a commanding voice abruptly interrupted, declaring that it was enough. The newcomer turned out to be, who served as the leader of the Awakening Academy's junior division and was also Yellow Hair's uncle. The person wondered if the other had not already faced enough humiliation. His eyes moved across the gathering of students, noting their tired faces after their recent awakening. He could tell that exhaustion weighed heavily on them. Instead of lingering to observe what was happening, he thought they should take advantage of the weekend and get some rest. The students were instructed to leave for home ahead of schedule and share news of their awakened class with their families. His expression changed suddenly when he turned his gaze to, demanding to know whether she realized that fighting was absolutely not allowed on school property. As soon as he heard the command to go home, his heartbeat quickened, and the man's loud shouting faded into the background, barely noticed. The overwhelming surprise of coming back to life was so intense that it took him a few seconds to understand what had happened. He remembered that 2 decades earlier, everyone had still been alive. On the morning of this pivotal day, another unexpected event was about to unfold. Frustration welled up inside as the realization struck. How could such a crucial date slip from memory? Today marked the most significant moment of an entire lifetime. Paid no attention to the director's angry stare and quickly dashed away from the area. Unable to contain his frustration, the director redirected his fury toward Ms. The teacher instructed the other person to control their student, assuring them that they would overlook the events of the day. Ms., feeling powerless, offered a slight bow as an apology, admitting that she had not succeeded in supervising her student as she should have. The scene shifted to the director's office. Yellow-haired character continued to pout, muttering under their breath in frustration. They silently cursed their misfortune, believing that only sheer luck had caused their defeat against someone they considered unworthy. The director shouted loudly. The instant they barged in, the child executed a sophisticated move known as flash step, leaving no room for pretenses. At the very moment just before contact was made, and even more significantly, he identified the most vulnerable area on the opponent's body and broke through their defense with a single, powerful strike. The director inhaled slowly, his voice growing serious as he explained that the whole sequence consisted of only fundamental warrior techniques. Despite spending 15 years fighting in brutal battles, he had witnessed nothing beyond these basics. He realized he lacked the skill to pull off those moves so flawlessly. Observing the fight, he saw it was as if an expert gamer was effortlessly outplaying a top-ranked beginner using only the simplest techniques. The boy, he concluded, was far different from the impression others had of him. At the same time, he raced toward his house as fast as he could, using every bit of energy he had. After being given a second chance at life, he wondered if there was any goal for him to pursue beyond seeking revenge. He was determined to put an end to this, no matter what it took, even if he had to sacrifice his own life. He arrived just before it was too late. At that very moment, his loathsome father remained comfortably seated, contentedly engrossed in the television. His mother remained completely safe and untouched by harm. As soon as he entered the room, his father glanced up and greeted him in a relaxed manner. The student returned home sooner than usual, prompting a remark about the early dismissal from school. He remained silent, his gaze drifting directly toward the kitchen where his mother was standing. Immediately, her eyes filled with tears. Seeing her mother standing before her, she felt an overwhelming surge of relief and gratitude that her mother was still alive. His mother, unable to hear or speak, greeted him with a bright smile as soon as he walked through the door and began to communicate with him using sign language. She had prepared his favorite dish, one that was both spicy and sour. His eyes filled with tears as he told his mother that he wanted to have pickled fish for his meal that day. She let them know she would respond the next day, while spicy and tangy noodles were already set out for today's meal. He begged his mother, expressing his strong desire to have it that day and asking if she could purchase it for him. She offered a resigned smile that seemed to convey her disbelief at his antics, then walked over to open the door for him. At that moment, his father broke the silence, questioning why his son returned home without offering a greeting. Today marked the day of their awakening, a significant milestone that everyone eagerly anticipated. Eager for an update, they asked to hear the positive developments. While he continued talking, he reached into the refrigerator and took out a bottle of liquor. They had wrapped up their tasks ahead of schedule, so they could return home and join in the celebration together. Bowed his head, speaking so softly that his words were barely audible as he admitted that he had slept through it and failed to wake up. The awakening ceremony lasted longer than expected that day, leaving them without an opportunity to act just yet. His father's face tightened with disapproval as he questioned the reason for his son's early return home. DeLay's son revealed a blue-tier class upon awakening, causing others to dismiss both father and son as worthless. His descendant believed that his own son ought to awaken with the red-tier ability, given their family line. He remembered how, despite having nothing in his youth, he himself had managed to awaken red-tier. They had exhausted themselves, giving every ounce of effort and energy to support and care for the other person. The speaker asked the other person to reveal the class they had awakened. While he continued to talk, an intense force seemed to emanate from him, spreading outward like an invisible wave. Admitted that he was still not fully awake. Before he had the chance to finish his sentence, a liquor bottle shattered against his head with a sudden crash. His father shot him a look filled with absolute disdain, questioning mockingly whether this was another one of his foolish mistakes. The student carried themselves through the school halls with an air of fake industriousness, but in truth, they had only managed to unlock a useless green-tier class, much to the speaker's embarrassment. The speaker wondered if the students' actions were meant to bring shame upon them. The man before them possessed the powers of a red-tier awakener and was also his father. He often let his anger get the better of him, making him prone to outbursts and aggression. So much time had passed that he could barely recall the events of Awakening Day. In his former life, his father had discovered his awakening as a green tier and, overcome with rage, had mercilessly beaten him within the walls of their home. His mother, just as she had done so many times before, moved quickly to protect him. At that time, he lacked the strength and courage to do anything. All he could manage was to shrink into a corner, powerless, forced to watch as his father hit her. For an entire hour, his father's anger raged on, only finally fading after the relentless beating ended. On that day, his mother suffered a broken leg, and a severe head injury caused lasting damage to her mind. Soon after, her health deteriorated severely, and she eventually lost her life. Now that he had been given a second chance at life, he was determined to do whatever it took to prevent history from repeating itself. The core-type warrior held a special characteristic that set it apart from other classes, yet it still required time to reach its full potential. At this moment, he remained nothing more than an E-rank awakener, the lowest and weakest among them all. His father's words cut through the air, sharp and harsh, commanding his son to get on his feet. He spat insults, calling him useless and expressing regret that he had ever allowed his mother to bring him into the world. He had reached the status of a C-rank red tier, setting him apart from classmates like. He also possessed significantly greater first-hand experience in actual battles. He had spent the morning waiting at home, arriving earlier than usual. He made his intentions obvious, preparing to follow through with his aggressive actions. Even if he had reached the gold tier at this moment, victory might still be out of his grasp. He had taken care to ensure his mother left before anyone else. In the following moment, a noise echoed from the direction of the door. His mother had returned. He felt a sharp pain in his chest, and an uncontrollable scream echoed silently within his thoughts. The character wondered aloud, questioning the unexpected early return. His mother, worried that he could be hungry, hurried back home immediately after purchasing some food. As soon as she entered, the atmosphere shifted. His father let out a harsh, derisive laugh, his eyes glinting with contempt. With a sneer, he gestured dismissively, as if challenging someone to witness the result of their actions, a child he clearly held in disdain. In his past life, after causing his father's death, he had been imprisoned. The character encountered another inmate. Someone had once posed a question to him. The speaker remarked that the person before them was the first green tier to ever move up. They explained that, under normal circumstances, a group would need to reach at least blue tier and achieve an A rank before even having the chance to advance. The speaker then wondered how this individual managed to accomplish it so soon. The journey involved skipping directly from the green tier all the way up to the exceptionally rare platinum tier. The guard eyed the newcomer with curiosity, wondering aloud how someone like him had landed in a place reserved solely for those awaiting execution. The thought raced through his mind that the man had truly earned his fate, for he could not comprehend how anyone could commit such a terrible act against their own mother. In this life, he was resolved to protect her from harm, so he raised his fist and struck out at his father. With just one effortless swing, the figure knocked them away, sending their body hurtling across the room. A veteran awakener possessed strength that far surpassed that of any regular person, even when relying solely on their physical abilities rather than special powers. No ordinary person would be able to survive a blow like that. His mother hurried to his side, anxious to see the extent of his injuries. In the blink of an eye, she stepped forward and positioned herself defensively before him, arms outstretched to shield him from harm. His father closed the door with a nonchalant gesture, a sneer spreading across his face as he silently expressed his disappointment. Upon discovering that was expecting a son, a deep sense of joy filled his heart. He believed that the family's opportunity to achieve greatness had at last arrived. Unlike those two inept brothers who failed to father a son, Link managed to succeed where they could not. The responsibility of restoring honor to the family rested on their shoulders. Despite everything, no one could understand why he had awakened to the weakest class of all, the infamous green tier. The speaker regarded the other person with disdain, thinking of them as someone incapable of progress, blaming their inability on their flawed genetics. He seized the nearest stool and hurled it in her direction. Right before it hit, he activated a flash step, causing the stool to shoot across the room. His father was also sent flying across the room. The character warned everyone to stay away from her mother. His father released a quick, entertained sigh, finding the situation intriguing. Panic his mother, her face clearly marked by deep concern. His father relaxed his posture and acknowledged that his son had matured, expressing his approval. He started moving closer to E, reducing the gap between them with each deliberate step. He tightened his hold on the sword, determined to keep his opponent at bay for just a little longer. In a sudden movement, his father sprang forward, closing the distance between them in an instant. An insight step, once activated instantly, offered complete protection from any harm if used with perfect timing. If the skill was used again in less than a tenth of a second, there was even an opportunity for the attack to bounce back at the enemy. Although he wielded the sword, the overwhelming gap in power caused his blade to break in an instant. In the following instant, he received a powerful blow from his father without flinching. Agony surged through his chest, and he wondered if his ribs would break under the pressure. His father advanced aggressively, a mocking expression on his face. He questioned disobedience, suggesting that his son was moving too quickly for his own good. Without waiting for a response, he launched another punch in his direction. He had no choice but to defend himself, knowing that if he failed, his mother would be the one to suffer the blow instead. A powerful fist followed, slamming down with overwhelming force. Folded his arms tightly across his chest, realizing there was no way for him to avoid the situation. His father looked down at him with a sneer, remarking that although he showed a hint of courage, it was pointless. In his father's eyes, having such a feeble class meant he was only fit to be beaten mercilessly. She met his gaze with unwavering determination, making a silent promise to herself that she would never allow tragedy to strike again in this lifetime. His father grabbed a stool once more and yelled at him, insisting that awakening did not make him important. The true leader's identity remained a mystery, unknown even to those who thought they understood everything. Suddenly, loud, insistent banging filled the air as someone struck the door, demanding for it to be opened. His father grumbled in frustration, wondering who was ruining the atmosphere at that moment. Relief washed over them as they exhaled, grateful that the others had finally arrived. His father muttered complaints as he shuffled toward the door, demanding to know who was there and what kind of person would come knocking. Standing at the entrance, Lee, deputy captain of the inspectorate squad, and a distinguished red-tier A-rank cleric, waited impatiently. He wondered aloud about the delay, questioning what could possibly be keeping the occupants from answering the door sooner. His father stopped in his tracks, surprised to see the deputy captain arrive unexpectedly. The team had gotten a lead that the fugitive known as Snow had been seen close to this building. The officers were going from house to house, asking residents if they had noticed anyone acting suspiciously. The man's face appeared on television daily, making him instantly recognizable. Anyone who spotted him would immediately notify the authorities without hesitation. At the same time, Smother carefully cleaned the blood off his face. The deputy captain noticed E and gestured toward him, silently questioning what was happening with E's companion. His father let out an uneasy laugh, thinking about how clumsy his son could be. He remembered sending the boy out for groceries, only for the child to stumble and take a fall. The father assured the deputy captain that it was nothing serious and not worth any concern. Before he managed to finish his sentence, he was abruptly interrupted as the other person insisted that he had been the one struck. His father's gaze hardened at once, his eyes narrowing with an intense, piercing look directed at him. To the father, he had earlier phoned in a false tip from the small store opposite his home, claiming to authorities that he'd witnessed someone matching the online description of the fugitive entering Building A of ZUM Mansion. As soon as word spread among the guards about spotting Snow, they sprang into action, ready for anything. Although he was caught off guard by their swift arrival, he still found himself with ample time to prepare. Quickly assured the deputy captain that the children had only been playing, insisting that he would never harm his own son because he cared for him deeply. Interrupted his father without hesitation, detailing where each of his wounds came from. He explained that the bruise on his arm resulted from being struck with a stool, and the gash on his head was caused by a liquor bottle. He pointed out where he had been punched and where he had been kicked, insisted that doctors could verify all the injuries on his body immediately. Once he finished describing his wounds, he promptly referenced the Awaken of Management Ordinance. According to the Codex Awaken Management Ordinance, Chapter 8, Article 4, any Awakener who loses control and threatens others with violence must be swiftly detained and confined in the Awakener prison for a period of 15 days. Both members of the inspectorate squad showed clear signs of astonishment, caught off guard by how thoroughly the newly awakened child understood the law. Now burning with embarrassment and anger, lost control, and demanded to know if he had lost their mind. Before had a chance to complete his statement, Lee advanced confidently, introducing himself as a member of the inspectorate squad. He informed that he was being arrested according to legal protocols and reminded him that he was entitled to stay silent. Lingsing's accusation made the other inspector roar in anger, but before the situation could escalate, a blue-tier cleric stepped in. He grabbed the enraged inspector, his voice icy as he warned him to stay calm, reminding him that if he continued to resist, they would be forced to restrain him. Even as the inspectors pulled lynching away, he continued to hurl insults at Yi, vowing that revenge would come. After left, Yi shifted his gaze toward his mother. In the following moment, she hurried toward him and wrapped her arms around him in a tight embrace. He responded by gently comforting her, letting her know that everything had ended and she was now out of danger. He had defended her once again, and now only 15 days remained until would be set free. He possessed ample time to become more powerful. He endured the beating only because something important was at stake. Only a short while earlier, he had discreetly retrieved the key meant for purchasing safe from his own pocket. The object in his possession was the same one he had used to turn against his teammates several years earlier. The quality that had enabled him to rise from being an E-rank underdog to achieving the status of a C-rank. He concealed it in the most secluded corner of his room, making sure no one in his family ever discovered his secret. In his former life, he remained unaware of it until after his father had passed away. With the sword now firmly in his grasp, he felt confident enough to attempt taking on a demon lair alone. Currently, the sole method for advancing in a class involved entering demon lairs. However, all of these lairs were overseen by the gods. Anyone who wasn't part of a guild found themselves barred from entering. At that moment, he found himself limited to using only the lairs overseen by the school. He also remembered the secret depth he had discovered in his past life. He needed to outpace all his competitors quickly, since was set to return in just 15 days. Before that happened, it was essential for him to grow significantly more powerful. In another location, found herself confined within the inspectorate squad's holding cell. Several inspectors whispered among themselves about the situation, noting that the whole guard squad had been called in for this incident. They pointed out that even the deputy captain had joined the search, yet despite their efforts, they found nothing. Some began to suspect that the report may have been a mistake. Whether the rumor was true or not made no difference. Since it was connected to the rebels, everyone needed to stay alert. If snow actually appeared in their county during Celebration Day, chaos would surely follow. His curiosity piqued, wondered aloud about the captain's early return. Before he could say more, interrupted, making it clear that whatever happened was not for them to talk about. From inside the cell near, a voice pleaded for leniency, urging the deputy captain to go easy since it was only a first offense and promising that it would not be repeated. He had heard that the man's wife was expecting a baby soon, and mentioned that his friend owned the most reputable postpartum center in county. His tone shifted, becoming icy as he considered the situation. Someone was attempting to offer a bribe to the inspectorate, an action he found especially bold, given that he had once served on a guild squad himself. He believed she was blind to how much she had changed. After expressing this, he turned away and left the room. Remained rooted to the spot, too shocked to say a word. Wu reminded everyone that bribing the inspectorate was considered more serious than just a detention-level offense. He advised them to rest, explaining that they would be moved to the Awakener prison the following day. He advised that it would be wise for her to keep a low profile during her time there. After giving this warning, he exited the room and closed the door behind him. Inside the cell, erupted with anger, his fury echoing through the confined space. In another part of town, after offering reassurance to his mother, Bite ventured by himself toward the demon's hideout. Demon lairs had the ability to appear in any location, existing as parallel realms to the real world that could be accessed through gates that appeared without warning. Once a lair was found, guild forces usually moved in swiftly to take control. Within their depths, fierce creatures lurked alongside precious ores infused with magic. This environment proved to be the ideal setting for Awakeners to enhance their abilities. Demon lairs posed significant threats, often demanding government inspections and a well-organized group effort before anyone dared to go inside. 5 years after his past life, this lair finally drew public attention. Its whereabouts had remained hidden for so long that it only came to light during a demonic assault on the human realm. According to the usual regulations, entering an F-rank lair meant assembling a group of at least 3 individuals with E-rank Awakener abilities. In contrast, an E-rank lair required a team of 5, made up of 3 E-ranks and 2 collaborating closely. According to the present timeline, this lair was most likely classified as F-rank, which meant it represented the lowest tier of hidden layers available to him at the moment. At that moment, Bai found himself standing in front of the entrance to a hidden lair that no one had ever discovered before. With careful movements, he extended his hand, sensing the invisible energies that drifted out from behind the gate. Within the building, threats hid around every corner, making it clear that only the right combination of skills and abilities offered any hope of making it out alive. Despite the risks, he found himself with no alternatives. He realized that he needed to become stronger on his own, and he had to do it quickly. His resolve unwavering, he moved ahead confidently, venturing directly into the uncertain perils that awaited inside the lair. As he entered the lair, an endless field of snow and glistening ice stretched before him, unmistakably marking it as the territory of wind-aligned creatures. A short distance away stood an enormous beast, encircled by a mound of human skulls. The creature before them was classified as an E8. Fortunately, it had not yet reached full maturity and remained in the middle of its. Without warning, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from behind. A fierce forest wolf, its level surpassing his, suddenly emerged from the shadows. He moved with lightning speed, narrowly evading an unexpected assault that came from behind. The wolf attacked once more, yet his sword intercepted the blow and pushed the creature away. Without a moment's pause, E rushed forward, heading directly toward the creature's exposed fangs. With a swift, precise motion, the blade sliced through the wolf, dividing its body neatly in half. Deprived of the powerful A-rank weapon he had seized from, the task would have been far more difficult. Normally, even landing blows to critical spots on these monsters would require several strong attacks, sometimes 3 or 4 to bring them down. A wave of nostalgia washed over him, as he remembered the worry-free times he had experienced at L rank. Studied the system panel, swiftly calculating in his mind that reaching the next level in an E-rank profession required defeating approximately 20 bloodthirsty forest wolves, and climbing from E-rank to D-rank demanded 10 such level-ups. Without warning, a group of wolves began howling in unison, abruptly interrupting his concentration. He raised his gaze and saw a whole pack fanning out in front of him. The lure of bloodshed had enticed them. His face grew tense, suspicion flickering in his eyes as he realized they intended to gang up on him. A wolf suddenly sprang toward him without warning. The sword gleamed as it sliced precisely through the target's weak spot, delivering a decisive and flawless blow. He slipped skillfully through the lunging mouths, striking back each time he spotted a chance. In his grasp, the sword flashed swiftly, striking down the wolves in rapid succession. With a swift twist, his sword sliced in a wide, icy arc, cutting through the group with relentless force. The system panel flashed repeatedly, announcing that the bloodthirsty forest wolf had been defeated and awarding 52 experience points. Snow Wolf level 18 had just been obtained. Only a single enemy was left standing on the battlefield, a savage wolf king, its hunger for blood evident in its fierce gaze. Without a moment's delay, Bai sprang from the ground and rushed directly toward the target. His sword moved so quickly, it was almost impossible to follow, unleashing a rapid series of spinning attacks that left no area unguarded. With one last powerful strike, the Wolf King fell to the ground, defeated. The notorious beast, known as the Bloodthirsty Wolf King, had been vanquished. Defeating the creature rewarded 56 experience points. Additionally, a Snow Wolf diamond was obtained as loot. Moving at this steady rate, he believed he would slowly work his way up to reaching D rank. He checked the system panel and saw that he was still just at level 2, ranked E, with only a modest increase of 12 points to his attributes. Panting heavily, he let out a dry, humorless laugh, amazed at how only 20 wolves had already left him completely drained. E-rank hunters struggled with poor stamina, making it difficult to carry on for long. The thought crossed his mind that he desperately needed a dimensional backpack, knowing that without one, he would have no choice but to abandon precious loot. The Guild Corps had seized control over nearly all magic dungeons, which left independent awakeners struggling to find opportunities to advance their abilities. In reality, these academies for awakeners merely served as scouting fields for the guilds, acting as sieves to identify and gather the most talented individuals. For the majority of students, achieving elite status and securing selection by a guild stood as the highest aspiration. Being expelled could result in remaining at the same rank indefinitely, as happened to, who was cast out of his guild and left permanently at C rank. Solo hunting remained inefficient for him, and the harsh cold sapped his energy more rapidly the longer he lingered in that environment. He chose to switch his approach, attempting to attract every creature in the dungeon toward himself. He moved swiftly through the dense woods, expertly avoiding the snapping jaws of ferocious wolves and skillfully chopping down any trees that blocked his path. A clamor erupted, so powerful it seemed to make the whole forest tremble. As expected, the noise attracted monsters from all sides. Within seconds, he found himself encircled by ominous clouds, slithering serpents, fierce wolves of the forest, and even several imposing wolf kings. He believed the sound was loud enough to alert every creature nearby. Among them was the bear, a cloud-type beast classified as E rank. Once the bear became consumed by fury, it rampaged through the area, its icy power driving it to lash out at everything nearby without mercy. He intended for the bear to injure the other monsters before he made his move. Afterward, the character would wait for the perfect opportunity to move in and defeat the weakened opponents, aiming to collect the most experience points possible. E-ranked beasts often displayed impressive ferocity, but intelligence was not among their notable qualities. The bear attracted the majority of the enemy's attention and helped him conserve a significant amount of energy. Despite everything, claiming the experience points required that he deliver the final strike himself. Despite the bear offering its assistance, started to sense the exhaustion setting in. The battlefield endured relentless damage, and the earth below them trembled on the verge of collapsing. He knew the moment had arrived to begin the next stage of his strategy. He plunged his sword into the frozen surface, sending fractures spreading rapidly across the ice. During the entire battle, he carefully observed the landscape around him. Instead of finding a frozen lake, the character realized they were standing on an icy bridge that stretched high between two rocky cliffs. When the bridge collapsed, all the monsters who had been standing on it tumbled helplessly into the dark chasm beneath. In an instant, nearly all of his opponents had vanished. Using the last of his strength, he prepared to confront the remaining survivors. Leveling up quickly was easiest for him by taking this route. Throughout the entire battle, Bai Yi's thoughts kept circling around a single question. Every dungeon was known to have a final boss, so it made sense that the E-rank dungeon would be ruled by something like an E10 savage Lion King. Bai Yi wondered how it was possible that all the noise and chaos hadn't managed to awaken the dungeon's ruler. The presence still remained hidden, leaving them to wonder why it had not revealed itself. Without warning, a chill wind surged from afar, rapidly turning all nearby creatures into statues of ice. The icy air surged in his direction, prompting him to sprint out of harm's way. Despite his quick reaction, he didn't move fast enough. Instantly, his feet became encased in ice, while the freezing sensation began to climb up his limbs. In that moment, realization struck him. The boss had never been sleeping. Instead, it had been lying in wait for just the right opportunity. From the very beginning, the ice bridge had been designed as a hidden snare. It simply had to show up at the conclusion to claim its prize. A clever boss remained concealed within an unremarkable, low-tier dungeon. The real final opponent turned out to be the D-rank cloud-type magical creature, known as the ruler of Azure Forest. It was not alone. Accompanying it were two lieutenants known as the fierce demon monkeys from the Azure Forest. The biting cold swept over, encasing him in a thick layer of ice from head to toe. He realized that if he didn't escape soon, the dropping temperature would overwhelm him. Desperation urged him to act quickly. Just then, the boss silently lifted one finger. One of the demon's trusted lieutenants, known as the Azure Forest Demon Monkey, sprang forward and attacked him without hesitation. The blow was moments away from making contact. A sudden burst of inspiration surged through E, prompting him to channel every ounce of his strength into releasing his powerful shatter skill. Employing the technique of object reflection, he redirected the demon monkey's powerful assault straight toward its source. The ice surrounding him broke apart from the impact, yet the effort left him feeling significantly weakened, and sapped much of his energy. Luckily, there was a brief window before the boss could unleash that powerful spell once more. He knew he needed to complete it before anything else could occur. Without warning, the clever boss unleashed a magical incantation. The bear and the other monsters broke free from the icy bonds that had held them captive. Without hesitation, every one of them focused their attention on Bai Yi, marking it as their chosen target. His powers, which resembled nuclear energy, had already been neutralized by the effects of magic based on clouds. Given his current level of stamina, even facing just 2 Azure Forest demon monkeys would prove to be a difficult challenge for him. With a countless number of beasts closing in around him, he realized that winning was nearly impossible. Found himself utterly exhausted, having spent all his energy after repeatedly battling the pair of Azure Forest demon monkeys. Believing triumph was already his, the boss flashed a self-satisfied smile and summoned a barrage of icy winds to attack. He was surprised by how quickly the skill became available again. In his former existence, he had encountered numerous moments of utter despair. With every encounter, he sharpened his ability to detect even the smallest chance to strike. He found himself faced with just 2 choices. One was to remain where he was and continue struggling, even though his energy was nearly spent. No matter how many blows he withstood or how many formidable creatures he managed to overcome, his odds of making it out alive remained non-existent. The alternative choice involved jumping from the edge of the cliff. As the ice bridge gave way, he witnessed almost 100 creatures tumble down into the abyss. Despite everything, he had managed to level up just 3 times, which indicated that roughly 60 people had lost their lives while around 40 others had managed to survive. It became clear that the only explanation was a river flowing beneath them, ready to cushion their descent. The river stood before him as his sole opportunity. However, breaking through the ice before had already left him almost completely exhausted. From such a towering height, diving into the water would leave his body battered and bruised, pushing him right up to the edge of his endurance, which he had nearly reached already. As he slipped closer to losing consciousness, memories from his previous life flickered through his mind. Upon returning, the person made no effort to invite the other out for a drink. He reached out and asked for an embrace. One of the employees eagerly suggested to their boss the idea of slipping away that evening to enjoy some gras rice together. Someone called out too, asking what the data meant and urging him to come closer to examine it. At the same time, he remembered his mother's anxious voice as she inquired if the injury on his head was still painful. He caught sight of it then, the taunting expression that belonged to Lean Lord echoing through its haunting melody. His father fixed him with a harsh, unforgiving stare, silently wishing for his demise. Ji wore a sly, deceitful grin, just as he had in his previous life. Every recollection intensified the anger smoldering within him. There were no boundaries for them. The very idea of restriction was impossible in their world. All of the regrets that had weighed on them in their past life lingered in their mind. Determined never to allow such events to repeat, they resolved to prevent them at all costs. The character reflected on their past defeat and the time they had fallen. Determined, they resolved that they would not let themselves meet the same fate again. Fueled by an unwavering determination, he brought his sword down in a powerful arc, slicing through the glacier above Lord's claw just as the attack was. With a fierce kick, the beast was launched through the air. Just then became enveloped in a burst of shimmering golden light that radiated from his whole body. A class advancement could be initiated solely under the most desperate circumstances. The character had tackled the magic cavern alone, attracted swarms of wild creatures, and even dared to jump off a cliff. He repeatedly placed himself in dangerous situations where his life was at risk. Everyone longed to experience that exhilarating high once more. Confronted with a life-threatening situation, he felt a surge of adrenaline rush through his body, pushing him to his physical peak. At last, this event led to the advancement of their class. The system announced that the advancement attempt had not succeeded because the necessary conditions were not fulfilled. Despite this setback, the user gained mastery over the advanced ability known as the Nuclear Holy Swordsman. Gaining access to this powerful 4xe skill ahead of time brought a deep sense of satisfaction. He narrowed his eyes, fixing a hard glare on the Glacier Overlord and the few beasts that still remained, determined that the moment had come to deal with them once and for all. Sanctuary unleashed a rapid, sweeping attack that burst forth with cleansing force. Several vicious wolves from the forest, along with a formidable bear from the icy plains, fell dead in an instant. The formidable ruler of the glaciers was split perfectly down the middle. A short while later, a shower of treasures fell into his backpack, including blood fangs, ice field pelts, sturdy bear bones, snow wolf fangs, and sparkling snow wolf crystals. Simultaneously, the sanctuary's purge protocol was activated. He erased any sign of tiredness, bringing his energy back to its peak. He lifted his gaze to the cliff overhead, his eyes focused and intense. In his mind, he acknowledged King as the ultimate adversary, silently vowing to return and defeat him. Having reached E8, he immediately noticed a change within himself. Dispatching E-rank monsters became a simple task, and the harsh chill that once bothered him now barely registered. Sanctuary's purge collected every bit of harm he had endured, then unleashed it all at once in a powerful explosion that struck every enemy close to him. The ability triggered only once he had withstood significant exhaustion and injury. However, as a result, all of his energy and power returned to him in full. Was unsure of how much time had passed since he'd entered the demon cave. Still, he realized he needed to rush home before his absence made his mother anxious. Perched atop the towering cliff, the boss summoned a pavilion into existence, weaving it from a shimmering display of magic. Several demon monkeys dangled from the beams, their bodies rocking back and forth in the chilly breeze. The boss remained perfectly composed at the center of the room, displaying a tranquil stillness reminiscent of a monk deep in meditation. Without warning, a deafening noise broke the stillness. The lifeless body of the bear belonging to Slain flew through the air and crashed into the pavilion, reducing it to rubble. The boss gradually lifted one eyelid, revealing a glowing red eye. Perched on the lifeless bear, he announced in a frosty tone that their paths had crossed once more. The boss simply lifted one finger in response. The demon monkeys let out fierce roars, while they rushed at him with wild energy. With ease, he raised his sword and turned aside their attack. The character swiftly retaliated, bringing down one opponent with a decisive, clean strike. Shock spread across the boss's face as its eyes grew wide, witnessing the swift defeat of its loyal lieutenant. Furious, the creature brandished its staff and sent a barrage of icy winds and shards hurtling forward in a relentless attack. However, E activated his immunity ability, making the effects of the blizzard vanish and leaving it powerless against him. Seizing the opportunity, he swiftly moved closer to the boss. The boss, visibly rattled, fumbled through a side pouch before producing a different magical artifact. The creature commanded the rest of the demon monkeys to arrange themselves into a protective barrier before it. With a surge of energy from his E ability, he executed a flash step that instantly propelled him forward at twice his previous speed. The sword moved so quickly it became a streak, slicing through the monkeys standing in the way and defeating them all at once. Without any hesitation, he moved with the speed of a lightning bolt and sliced off the boss's left arm. The boss was still struggling to recover from the surprise. He brought his sword down once more, slicing a deep gash into the creature's flesh. The system announced that the player had overcome the level 11, Tier 0 boss known as the Lord of a master of cloud magic, and earned 1,000 experience points as a reward. A message appeared announcing a new achievement. The individual had become a D-rank nuclear warrior with every attribute doubled. The system that the cloud element energy had reached its maximum level, signaling that a new class would soon emerge. At that moment, E finally understood what had happened. In the heat of battle, he had been so focused that it slipped his mind. The cloud element had already reached its maximum capacity. He had now gained access to the E-rank Cloud Mage class and could freely alternate between different classes whenever he wished. He couldn't believe his eyes. It was a red-tier class. Even at the lowest E rank, the 200% boost to base stats meant its strength already matched what he had achieved as a D rank warrior. He collected a handful of drops, a mage weapon of D rank, a magic stone, and a D rank magic pouch from the fallen boss's body. Standing directly before a group of demon monkeys, he remained composed as he retrieved the 2 loot items. Only then did the monkeys fully grasp what had just occurred. He gazed at the lesser opponents before him, a surge of excitement coursing through his veins. He immediately activated his recently acquired cloud form, known as Mage Mode. A sly smile appeared on his face as he wondered what abilities this new class might reveal. At about 10 a.m. at home, his mother realized he was still in bed, so she walked over and tapped gently on his door. She was taken aback to find that no one was in the room. The bed displayed a carefully arranged blanket, with a tiny note positioned on top. The teenager informed her mother that she was heading to a friend's house and promised she wouldn't return late, assuring her not to worry. She immediately sensed the truth. Had he actually visited a friend, he would have said so face-to-face without resorting to leaving a note behind. Since returning home the previous day, his behavior had noticeably changed, leaving those around him wondering what could have caused such a transformation. A sense of unease washed over them, leaving them to wonder why dread had suddenly taken hold. From 10 in the morning until 11 at night, he remained absent, causing his mother's concern to deepen with every passing hour. Dinner was already set out, as she waited patiently for his arrival through the doorway. The character wondered anxiously where the other person had disappeared to, troubled by their long absence and silently hoping nothing terrible had befallen them. She remained motionless in the living room throughout the night, not stirring until the clock struck 5 in the morning. She felt as if she were on the verge of shattering. The front door slowly swung open, and he entered the house, his footsteps quiet on the floor. He felt a wave of guilt as he apologized to his mother in his heart, regretting how long she had been waiting for him to return. She sprang up and wrapped her arms around him in a firm embrace, her cheeks wet with tears. Speaking gently, offered a suggestion and asked if the others would listen. They decided it was time to go somewhere new, determined to leave him in their past forever. With the help of his enchanted pouch, he retrieved his 10 most prized possessions, carefully leaving his necessary weapons untouched. He walked over to a merchant who appeared to be in his middle years, planning to offer the red gemstones he had discovered in the demon cave for sale. The man looked closely at the gem he held, ready to say, 800 per stone. But before he could finish, the other person interrupted him with a firm offer of 8,000. The man's eyes grew wide with surprise. He couldn't believe what he was hearing about the stone. Acting swiftly, he grabbed the stone back and with a frosty tone declared that if there was no interest, he would simply walk away. After an intense negotiation, both sides agreed on a final price of 7,000 for each stone. The man decided to purchase just a portion of his stock before finalizing the transaction. He held the leftover gems in his palm, remembering that in his past life he had known many skilled magicians and brokers. He was confident that these gems would also earn a high price. With this money, he realized he could provide his mother with a far more comfortable place to live. In her previous existence, not once had she experienced a moment of ease. In this lifetime, longed for nothing more than to ensure she could experience a life filled with comfort and tranquility. He brought his mother to see a house and confidently paid the entire rent up front. Before long, the pair settled into their new home. In the kitchen, his mother softly hummed as she herself was making dinner. Now that he had secured a place to live, his abilities had improved enough to lower his rank, and he had also obtained a new class. Even though his worthless father was behind bars, he knew he couldn't let his guard down. He realized that he needed to settle the issue before dedicating himself to thoughts of revenge. The next day, he would need to go back to school. He carefully buffed the enchanted gem he had acquired, then slid it onto his finger. He clenched his fist, determination filling his mind as he decided it was time to search for the elusive object. At the same time, at the entrance of a different demon cave, stepped out accompanied by several of his followers. Despite their obvious fatigue, they still managed to praise him, acknowledging that the young master's abilities had reached new heights once more. A young girl offered him a bottle of water, suggesting that he rest for a moment. Brushed the object aside with a swift motion, determined to make use of the remaining time by moving on to the next cave for further training. Nobody would surpass him in progress, he believed. During the upcoming mock combat test, he was determined to prove to everyone that he alone was the true genius. In another part of the building, a woman gazed out through a towering window that stretched from the floor all the way to the ceiling. Her whole body radiated a soft golden light as she looked over the freshly printed list of awakeners in her hand, quietly noting to herself that there wasn't a single gold-tier profession among this year's group. There seemed to be nothing exciting awaiting anyone in this practice exam. On Monday morning, his mother cooked a filling breakfast for her son. While hastily finishing his meal, he grumbled to his mother about not being woken up. She used sign language to express that he had been sleeping so peacefully that she hadn't wanted to disturb him. She reached out to tousle his hair with a gentle touch, then used sign language to reassure him, reminding him to take his time and that an occasional tardiness was nothing to worry about. His face lit up with a gentle smile. Restful nights had become a rare luxury for him, and sharing a quiet morning meal with her was something he had never experienced until now. Without warning, his mother gently tapped his shoulder, catching him off guard. He turned toward her, his expression filled with surprise, silently wondering what she wanted. The person asked what the other might like, suggesting options such as a toy, a book, or perhaps an electronic gadget. The character wondered aloud why their mother seemed ready to surprise them with a present, feeling puzzled by the unexpected gesture. She gestured toward the calendar hanging on the wall, reminding him that his birthday would arrive next Friday. As he heard the word "bye," he suddenly stopped in his tracks. It dawned on him that his birthday was approaching much sooner than he had remembered. So many years had slipped by. In his former life, the joy of birthdays vanished after losing his mother. From that moment on, celebrations ceased. Eventually, the thought of his own birthday faded completely from his mind. A question lingered in their mind, as they wondered what it was they truly desired most. As he gazed at his mother from across the table, it dawned on him that what he truly desired was already within his reach. He moved forward, ready to tackle the next objective on his list. He recognized the person as the same betrayer who had deceived him in his past life. Upon arriving at the Awakeners Academy, the teacher positioned himself at the podium and addressed the students, suggesting that their weekend break had surely provided them with ample rest. With preparations for the simulated combat about to start, the atmosphere grew tense. The significance of the event was clear to everyone present, making further explanation unnecessary. The Awakeners Academy operated under the strict supervision of the Divine Guild, which carefully monitored each action taken by its students. The upcoming simulated battle marked their first official appearance since awakening. It served as more than just their middle school graduation test. The event would also be aired live for everyone to see. More significantly, top performers would be rewarded with an opportunity to accompany the high school division on their cultivation journey. Each year, the cultivation journey offered the greatest chance for one to interact closely with members of the Divine Guild. The school planned to choose the best students from both the middle and high school, sending them on a joint trip to He Country, where the Divine Guild's main headquarters was located. He stood silently within the crowd, paying close attention as the teacher spoke. In his heart, he remembered the holy city, the home of the Divine Guild, where he had first encountered his master. That place was also where that man was born. In the past, he and his master never interacted directly. It was only after he became a member of the Divine Legion that the two finally met face to face. He realized that achieving a top score on this exam would be the quickest path to joining the cultivation journey and locating the person he sought. The teacher's announcement sparked a range of emotions among the students surrounding him. A few faces lit up with excitement, while others showed clear signs of nervousness. The teacher gestured toward a nearby door, signaling that it was time to start the initial phase, which focused on physical training. The group entered the gravity room, where they were instructed to begin their training with 10 sets of shuttle runs. The students formed a neat line and entered the gravity room single file, each one following closely behind the other. He approached the teacher with a steady demeanor and expressed his reluctance to use the training room.